Hey guys, it's Jason here. We have a heck of an episode with our man here, Jeff Nuccetelli. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Got it, man. You nailed it.
Oh, yeah, Jeff, I'm not lying. All day I'm like, how do you pronounce it? And I went through all the different variations. I'm like, he must have heard them all. And I didn't want to screw that up. So, yeah, okay, good.
Nailed it, man. You might be the first ever.
Real well, there you go, guys. It's an exclusive on UAP Studies. Nailed Jeff's last name. Uh, just to let you guys know, Katie won't be joining us for this episode. She's doing a MUFON symposium or some sort of presentation with MUFON this evening, but that's okay because I could run the ship, no problem. You know what I mean? Not nervous. Jeff, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it. This has been something that I've been looking forward to for some time. Been watching you for some time now. Coming out, I saw of course, the hearings, and you were there. I was at the second one, but not yours. Uh, but I saw what you guys did, the bravery that it takes to not only step forward, but you're now like a face attached to an event. You're now known for something, and that's hard as a whistleblower when you first come out because you're not really expecting that. It's almost like a fame, but not, not for good reasons, anyways. Since you came out, or since you've been out there, what have you noticed reaction wise from people around you?
Yeah, it's been interesting. In general, the reaction has been positive, like kind of overwhelmingly positive for me. And I think maybe that's because a lot of the people that I'm close with, like my friends and family that have known me for a long time, they already knew about all of this. We had
Right.
been talking about, me and my friends have been talking about those incursions at Vandenberg, for 20 something years. So, uh, but as far as like the general public reaction, it's been generally pretty positive too.
Yeah.
We've got our trolls and things that come after me, and things like that. But yeah, it's been a positive experience overall.
I always imagine the trolls when they're doing their thing, they're sitting on their toilet bowls.
Yeah.
I call them toilet bowl experts. You're stupid. Like, I don't know why I argue with them, Jeff, but I do. You know what I mean? It's like I do it to myself. Uh,
Yeah.
we'll talk about the event a little bit here for those that may not have known what took place. Um, but out of curiosity, before we get into that, have you had time to think about why these things appear at military installations, and specifically if there's a lot of armory, if there's weapons, bombs, nuclear facilities? Why is there an attraction to that? Or have you come up with any concepts behind that?
Yeah, lots of theories, and of course you have the nuclear connection, like that's pretty well established as a
Right.
pattern. But there's also a lot of encounters on military installations that don't have any nuclear material or weapons or anything like that. So, that's the mystery behind these encounters. Like, what is the intent and purpose of them showing up?
Right.
And it's not as simple as, well, they're interested in our technology. It's more than that, right? And I've been thinking a lot over the last year, trying to kind of flip the script and think, well, maybe they're interested in people as much as they are in the technology.
Right.
So I think it's a blend. I think there's a geographic component. I really think this is a complete mystery. We have really no idea what we're dealing with, right? We're kind of grasping at straws and grabbing whatever data we can find. It's like, okay, nuclear weapon connection, military connection. But, when you really dig deep into the phenomenon, all those kind of connections fall apart, right?
Yeah.
Because these objects show up at schools and churches and in traffic and at nuclear sites and right.
Yeah.
So, that's what I've been thinking a lot about is, the intent. And I think it's way deeper than just a connection to like, they're observing our military capabilities. I think it goes much deeper than that.
You bring up a good point, even with schools. Why are they interested in delivering messages to kids?
Mhm.
Or, there's a plethora of different reasons why they seem to always show up at specific locations. But yeah, that one's always racked my mind as to why, even listening to I'll say Colonel Holt. I'm not sure if that was his name, but the gentleman from the Rendlesham Forest, as he
Yeah.
was recording what he was seeing, and it was some to the effect that you were mentioning, I think, in another podcast about hearing the voice of a grown man who's fully trained, very well seasoned, being panicked and terror in the recording. And you listen to those tapes and listen to it, live, the impression that you got from your teammates. Um, the first time you heard that, like, how did you feel as a trained soldier in the field? But you're hearing your, people in the military, people that have served, like you said, were very well trained, panic. Like, what does that do to a guy's psychological, situation when you're putting into that?
Yeah, and that's the thing, when the Vandenberg incursions began, that was 2003. We had already been at war for 3 years
Right,
or a and a half or whatever. And all those guys had already deployed. Some of them have seen combat already, and that's kind of the point. They're not easily intimidated or shaken or panicked. And if that would have been some kind of conventional like attack, let's say, like there
right,
was somebody was coming in a helicopter, you would hear excitement, but you would not hear panic. You'd hear, cold, calm, collected, transmissions.
right.
And that's telling, right? You've got combat veterans out there freaking out over the rate, losing discipline, because of what they're encountering is so abnormal that they can't process it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And my heart goes out to you guys because we mentioned this several times on the podcast. You enter the military and the expectation you're going to kill somebody or you're going to serve, so that gets brought into it. But you never think that you're going to have an interaction with something that is not us, that's
right,
clearly far more advanced. There's no training for that. They can't prepare. There's no scenario that they run you guys through. They just come in and intimidate the crap out of you guys after the fact to tell you, hey, you didn't see nothing.
right,
Um, and that's the part that to me irks me because it's you guys that are the whistleblowers. Without you, we wouldn't know what they, whoever they are up to. It's
right.
you guys that inform us. And like I said, my dearest, seriously, thank you for doing what you did because that's super important. And we need more people like you. If there's other veterans watching this and you've experienced something, you have options to come forward, and it's getting better now. But I understand the threats that were made some people. Uh, for those who are listening and not too familiar with the event, could you run us through um, what happened?
Yeah, so I'll try to make it brief. But in October 14th, 2023, I came into work and was immediately notified that we had a real world UFO encounter at 0845 that morning. So broad daylight encounter. And that was the encounter that came up at the first congressional hearing with David Grush and Ryan Graves and Dave
Right,
Fravor. And that's called the Vandenberg Red Square event. And what happened was we had three Boeing contractors working on a launch site, and they came out of the hangar, and there was a giant 100-yard red glowing cube or square, hovering over the launch pad. And they called that in, that triggered an investigation. Eventually, the police got involved. My friends were dispatched and investigated, and they took sworn handwritten statements. They got all the data, but we couldn't resolve the case. There was nothing on radar, on and on, right?
right.
And then my we came on duty. My flight, a flight is like a platoon.
Okay.
My flight came on duty that evening, and I was briefed on it. And then we went out to work. And around midnight, another one of these giant, like rectangular or square craft approached the most important launch facility on the base.
And when you're
Uh,
saying launch, it's a nuclear launch? Like,
these are space launch assets.
okay,
So
thank you. Yeah,
um, has capability to put some of the largest rockets we have up. So a lot of satellites go up and weapon systems from that
right.
base.
It's an important one.
Very critical, especially at that time. It was that base was like the hub of our of our space initiatives, right?
Okay.
So yeah, and my friends were on duty. They called it in, and as I was driving out there responding, the object shot in at like light speed and hovered right over the entry control point. And we had 5 witnesses on scene that just stood under there and watched it.
Yeah.
Again, it just shot off. And and that just kept happening over the month of October into November into December. And it was sporadic. And we had multiple events like that.
Wow.
And and they continued up until about 2005. And then I left the base in 2006. So I don't know what was happening after that, but and we
So
had one of the objects actually landed on our flight line, and my good friend Grant Best witnessed that. You know,
he
so
mentioned, I think as well, that like that's when things got serious. That's when men showed up and basically started threatening other people, like,
right.
don't talk about it. And I thought that was interesting. It's like, why would they wait till that thing lands? Like, what is it specifically about that initiates this protocol? Um, when you're doing this investigation too, you're looking into it. Do you think the chain of command as it goes up is what loses momentum with these things? Because it just seems like it just evaporates into nothing. When
Yeah,
you bring, yeah, go ahead.
I think what is happening, and we don't know for sure, but we have some pretty good evidence that as these incidents are up channeled and reported, they're co-located and they're basically gobbled up by some program in the DoD,
Oh,
and then the files and the information are maintained in a program.
so
So
is it like because it goes up? Is it intercepted by these programs? Is
we're
it just
not
automatically given to this? You think?
not sure. We don't know the mechanism, but we do know that it is reported up the normal chain of command to a certain point.
Right.
We don't know what's happening after it's up channeled to that information. We don't know if there's protocols that are initiated, or we have no idea. And at Vandenberg, we would notify every time, and this would go all the way up the chain of command, and nothing would come back. Nothing would come down from headquarters saying, okay, here's what you should do, or here's how you could prepare, or anything. So information went up and nothing came down.
So it's pretty much you guys experience this. And I mean, you guys, I mean, the military, the US or any military serving somewhere, you guys experience this. You don't know what it is. You don't know how to handle it. You do your report and it just goes up and that's it. And you guys are still left with a bunch of questions and they're just left unanswered. It's quite frustrating because you hear that over and over again by people in the department. Out of curiosity, when you first heard the report that somebody had seen something at you said it was early in the morning, what was your initial thought? Were you a UAP like believer or any experiencer before that, or was that your first time?
No, I already believed, had a strong belief in it, because my family has a history with it. My my grandmother and my grandfather on my mother's side witnessed the Presque Isle landing, which was a
Wow.
huge Project Blue Book case. They were fishing and they saw the craft land, and that's all they saw. But that was a huge case with
Yeah.
multiple witnesses, including police officers, and there were journalists that got a photograph of the thing. Um, and they blamed that. The FBI and Project Blue Book said that that entire event was a hoax perpetrated by a 16-year-old girl. Right. Okay.
Yeah, because we all know that they have the capability of doing that. And
Right.
what year
And
was
then,
it? Yeah.
yeah, then my father, when he was a teenager, him and a bunch of his friends, I actually just got done talking to one of my dad's buddies about it. They saw the Kecksburg fireball. We grew up in Kochburg, Pennsylvania, and Kecksburg is about 40 miles away.
Okay.
My dad and his buddies were outside and they saw the fireball come in. So I grew up hearing about that. So I'm like, okay, maybe it's real, maybe it wasn't really a fireball, maybe it was a craft, and you know. And then when I came to work that day, the people that were telling me about it, I know I'm very close with, and a lot of them I'm like their supervisor or I'm their boss or
Right.
good friend. And I figured out within a few seconds it was real and it wasn't a prank. And they were
Because you know
telling me,
these people, right? Yeah.
yeah, I know them, and I know them well. I've been to their weddings and I've watched their children be born, and then they're immediately like, dude, go to the command center. And I walked right over there, and they were like, and that was the cool thing about it. Everybody was excited to tell me because they knew I was into UFOs. They're like, Jeff is not going to believe it.
Right, right.
And
Jeff
but
got to see it. Yeah.
yeah, but during that entire initial incursion, I never saw one. I would see maybe a light here and there briefly, and other people were calling it in, and I was responding and investigating and taking statements from people, but I never saw one until the event in 2005. And then you move from believing to knowing. And
Yeah.
like, now I know, right?
You just said it right there. You move from a believer to knowing. And I say that often to people say, well, I don't believe in aliens or I don't believe in UFOs. I'm like, well, you have that luxury. Some
Mm,
of us don't. Some
right.
of us know, right? And it's not about believing. It's not Santa Claus or the Easter Bunny. It's they're either here or they're not. And there's enough evidence to suggest they're here.
Right.
The object itself, you said, was moving at a tremendous speed. Never displayed air or made any noise. It just
Yeah.
silently took off.
Right. It matches the pattern. There was no noise, no propulsion, strange lighting configurations, or, and just impossible speed.
It's a mind bend when you see that, isn't it?
Yeah, it changes your life. Like
You're
there's
like, what? I know this exists now. That's crazy. No, it's like I said, the fact that you guys, are able to come out and talk about it may encourage other people to step forward. I know the Navy has major issues with these not only UAPs but underwater USOs, I think they're called. They complain about it all the time, and yet it doesn't seem like we get anywhere with it. It doesn't seem like anybody's doing anything about it. They're like, "Oh, just it's okay,
yeah.
just let it go." But at some point, you can't let it go. And I just amongst the community, your friends, people that have experienced this, is there any frustration, or are they just okay with the way things are kind of coming out?
There, there is frustration, but for most of the people I know, there's a lot of relief. Like things I know some people think things are not moving fast, but in my
Right.
opinion, the last like 4 years have been breakneck speed. Like I can't believe we've had three congressional hearings and other congressional hearings of a different type, and we've had all these witnesses come out. We have the mainstream media talking about it in a real way. We've got the president of the United States talking about it in very real terms, right?
Yeah.
So the way I see it, we're in like the golden age of disclosure, right now. So I think we have the momentum, and we just have to keep the pressure on the media and the government so they can't, we don't get distracted. And then it just kind of peters out. And 10 years from now, you know,
Pops
another
up again.
another
Yeah.
veteran is going through what we've gone through.
Well, that's the thing. It's the knowing that there's maybe some people that experienced this prior to you, that veteran sort of network. And you're seeing that more now, right? You're seeing more people reaching out, the same as like experiencers, people that are abductees have support groups. I think it should be the same thing for veterans.
Yeah.
You don't have enough support. Sorry, I'm Canadian and I know I get attacked all the time if I mention anything in the United States, but veterans in the States do not get their due for the service that you guys do. It's embarrassing what they give you compared to what you gave them. And that's the sad part. I wish they would give you more resources, but it seems that it's wasted on something else. And that's the sad part. That's why people don't want to step forward. There's nothing, there's no net. And that's sad. I think maybe that's by design or,
That is, I think, partially by design for
yeah,
sure. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, especially losing your job. And I mean, we were talking about this the other day. People have not only been killed for this, which there's probably a lot of body bags behind this, They've been threatened. They got divorced. They lost their families, lost their jobs, all because people are like, you're gonna stay quiet. And it's like being canceled prior to cancellation, happening. It's people are being canceled by the government. And you got to think, and this is the part I'm curious about your thoughts on this because I've been dwelling on this for some time. What is it that could be so scary or so world shattering that we find out the truth? What could it possibly be? Besides eating us, what else could there possibly be to be afraid of? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I think a lot about that. And, over the years, I've had kind of, there's part of me that wonders if I'm on the wrong side of disclosure. That if whatever the phenomenon represents is so bizarre and alien and terrifying that, the people willing to do anything to cover it up are maybe the good guys, right? But even if that were to be true, I want to know because if they can handle it, then I can handle it, right? If they can handle it, we the people can handle it. So it could be that, it is terrifying and bizarre and alien. Or it could be the opposite, and it's so empowering to humankind and so magical and beautiful of a revelation that they'll lose their control, right? So I think it could be a blend, right? And that's where I fall. Like nothing is either just pure good or pure evil. Everything is a blend. And so I think that it boils down to reality is more mysterious and enchanted and wondrous than we ever imagined. And I think that human beings, we used to know that. And, if you look at all of our human observations throughout history and all of our most important literature, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the anomalous. We're talking about lights in the sky and lights in the ocean and apparitions and the things that aren't supposed to be real.
Right.
But that's all human beings have been talking about in all of our religious texts, right? From the beginning of recorded history. So at some point, we were taught and told that's the world is very mundane
Yeah.
and explainable, and everything can be measured and counted. And I think that's very far from the truth. And what the phenomenon represents is a multitude of different things. We just live in a very dynamic and incredibly rich universe. And sometimes we see a little glimmer, or the veil's pulled back a little bit, and we catch a glimpse. And human beings fall into two general categories. Some are like, "Whoa, what is that?" They run off into the forest into danger, and others are more prudent and they write it off, right? And that's what we want to find out, right? Like, what is it? What are we interacting with?
Yeah.
What is observing us? What are we observing? And why? Because we're beyond, there's no question that the phenomenon is real, right? It's
Yeah.
beyond question at this point to me. So the next question is why keep it secret? And why go to the lengths that they do to do that?
Well,
So,
you mentioned a good point about the human potential, and that if they expose what we're actually capable of, they lose control.
right.
Recently, I mean, you see it all over the news. It's just evil. And I mean, absolute evil, just being constantly brought up into the news. You keep finding out more and more people have been just horrible. And this is the point where I mentioned we're sort of like at a point where we either regress or we progress. And we're right on that tipping point. And I think having disclosure exactly at this moment, I don't know, it's almost like it was meant to be because it's like, well, while everything is going to crap, might as well throw in the aliens are here too, right? At least it feels that way. Um, do you think there's a spiritual aspect to this that we keep dismissing because we keep looking at it from a scientific point of view?
Yeah, absolutely. I I don't know how far science can go, science as such now, right? The way we conduct science, we have to measure things, and I don't know if that's going to lead us anywhere. My intuition tells me that whatever the phenomenon is beyond our measurement systems, right?
Right.
It's elusive, and that's why I think disclosure is going to come through art and the art world, and
Oh,
through
wow.
music, storytelling, and sculpture and painting. And I think that's probably one way to try to understand, what we're interacting with. We
Right.
need science too, but we need to listen to the philosophers and the artists and everything in between. So yeah,
It's like
I,
science, philosophy, and spirituality, the
yeah,
Trinity, right? I think
right,
that's what's going to help us. I think we've been, especially me, I mean, previously that I've evolved over my understanding of the phenomenon, but I boxed everything. I didn't think that they merged together at any point, and I'm starting to understand that they do. They surely do. It's all part of it, and it's all part of reality. This is part of this dimension that we inhabit at the current moment.
right.
But not knowing that, or there's a hindrance to it, whether it's human or not human intentions, I think that needs to come out because the biggest fear people have is the control.
Right.
But they're okay with the control as long as it's a human behind it. But we're now finding out the humans behind the control aren't so good of humans. And it's almost like I want to hear the aliens out. Like, well, what do you guys have as a system? Let's give that a shot. Vote them in. And that's what they're afraid of. They're afraid of people not relying on the government, which government's taken more and more. All I'm Canadian, and I can tell you, they will, it's for your safety. We do this for your safety. And then they pass a bill that, oh, you get attacked if you put a meme online. Cops come knocking at your door. That's how they do it. Um, that's how we become really bad shape. But I think throwing in the mix that, hey, we're not alone, and it's not just one species visiting us; it's a multitude of species or different intelligences. That's a even bigger deal, I think, than just one species making contact with us. The fact that we're like a zoo, and we could
Yeah.
get into these visits. Um, your case with the red square is interesting because I've not heard much about that. Like it was flat. It wasn't even a cube. It was just a flat square. And it's so unique because I have not heard that before. And surely for its size, that's pretty big. Has anybody approached you to any theory as to what it was? If it was a craft, a hologram,
No, no theory. There are some square-shaped UFOs in the historical record here and there, but they're rare.
right?
But yeah, we from that event we had no radar returns, but the witnesses described it as a structured, solid object, and they were very, I think it was a few 100 feet over them.
That's
So not
crazy.
not a hologram, you know.
Not being picked up by, yeah, and at the velocity at which it took off. That's insane. That's insane. What a cool sighting. Let's get into the Varginha case because you've been hanging out with James Fox, and that case I think is way better than the Roswell case, in my opinion, because you got not only bodies, crash retrievals, you got the United States getting involved, you got doctors, police officers. It's a big case. Tell me a bit about the trip and the work you guys did together.
Yeah, so that trip was another like level of ontological shock for me, because in my framework, I take all these labels like they're aliens or ET or multidimensional or whatever,
Right?
and I'm like, I don't know, right? I don't know what we're dealing with, and I just kind of leave. I'm like agnostic about it. Like maybe it's aliens, maybe it's demons, who knows, right?
Right.
And so when James invited me to go down, him and I are really good friends, and he wanted me there for a variety of different reasons. I have a pretty broad skill set, and yeah, I had the opportunity. I met all the witnesses that are in the film, and many that aren't. And you get to spend time with these people. It's not like it's just a meet and greet. We
Right.
spent a lot of time with these people, and you get to know them and their family and their children and their grandchildren. And you know, after hearing all the testimony from all these people, and then you realize, whether they're from modest means or they're a doctor and they're wealthy, they would have had to have been lying to their families for 20 years about it, right? They'd
Yeah.
have to be lying to their grandchildren and their daughters and their sons and their wives and everybody in between.
And they would all have to be really committed, the same level of dedication each, right?
Yeah, and they would have to also coordinate with all the other people in the city,
Right.
and so after you meet these people and you realize, they're not the grifters, they're not selling anything, they're honest, hardworking, good people. And then the overwhelming amount of, other evidence in the case, I just came away from that like completely, like I didn't know what to think. Yeah, it
Right.
was powerful and moving and very emotional. But for people that, really briefly, like for people that aren't familiar with the case, 1996, allegedly, there were multiple UFOs seen over Varginha in the region. And then a man named Carlos de Souza saw one come down and crash in a farmer's field. He went to help. He thought it was a blimp that went down. He encountered the military, showed up on the scene. They shoot him off, and allegedly some alien creatures were seen in the town later that day, and multiple encounters in the town with people. And then one of the creatures was captured by two military policemen and transported to the regional hospital or the local hospital. And that creature was seen by my friend Italo, Dr. Italo, and a friend of his. Allegedly, a video recording was made of that brief encounter. And then military personnel came in and they took the creature away, and then it was transported to a military installation and allegedly finally flown back to the US along with the crash and the craft. So yeah, and Varginha it's not a small town. It's like 300,000 people.
That's a pretty decent sized place.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a pretty big city. And that event was not only regional. I mean, it was on the Brazilian news nationwide for months until
Right.
the military came in and did a press conference and basically shut it down. Um, so yeah, like you said, I think it's one of probably the most important UAP case in history at the moment
Yeah.
because almost everyone's still alive.
Yeah. And Roswell's a lot of hearsay, I think. And the thing is, people really didn't care about Roswell till the 1980s
yeah,
when it got brought back. But I mean, there was like 40 years of just lost everything. It's like the momentum. Like if you're a
right.
police officer, you got 48 hours or something to find a missing person. And the longer it goes, the
Yeah.
more you lose the trail. And I think it's the same thing for that. And the Varginha case, which was interesting, I didn't know that. James had to correct me on this. But that evening, there was another craft that was scanning the city looking for the two uh,
Yeah.
lost entities. And I was like, wait, what? I thought that was the same craft. It's not. Turns out it
No.
was a separate one. Did you manage to go to the crash site while you were there?
We didn't go to the crash site, but I went to all the other locations in town, like the wall where the three girls saw it, and I got to meet them and their family. They're just wonderful people.
Right.
And yeah,
Like an
so
iconic spot, too, right?
oh yeah, Marco Leal, that's he's my good friend now, and he's James's partner. He's been working with James for I think 20 years. Marco took me to every spot, in the town, and it gave me a full tour. And Marco's a lot of the reason why the case is so prominent. He actually helped the city of Varginha put together the museum and all the different attractions in town. So yeah, Marco is the man. He knows everything about the case.
It is like Roswell, like the whole town gets in on it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah, if you
Yeah.
go, there's like a 50-foot flying saucer right in the middle of town that they built.
Well, they
And
should show that. Yeah. Did they
and
show
that was
that
a
in the
craft.
documentary? I didn't see it.
They should. I'll send you pictures, man. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
this giant, huge 50-foot flying saucer right in the middle of town. And that was the craft that was scanning, allegedly.
Yeah. There was a police officer that died as well.
Yeah.
The one that apprehended one of them, he held it, but he died of a weird, like autoimmune attack. And he was a healthy, was what, 27 years old. He was a healthy guy.
Yeah.
And within 24 hours after handling that thing, he died,
Well,
which again,
it took a couple of weeks actually
oh,
for,
couple
for
of, oh man, that's even worse. That's even sadder. That's a long time to die.
yeah,
Um,
it was rough.
But like I said, with all the information, this is way better than Roswell. And you have confirmation of bodies. Was Roswell again? No, no, they were dummies. There was no bodies. It's whatever.
Yeah.
And for James to bring this into light as well, and make it more known to the upper, uh, hemisphere, for us to know what's taking place down below, because it's equally the same size as up here. We're so focused on just the United States, Canada, Mexico, but this happens globally.
Yeah.
And I keep thinking about how many stories are there out there that we'll never know because the person will never talk about it. And like you said, some people try to reason things out. Some people don't even give it a second thought. It just dismiss it. They don't even have a memory of
Yeah.
seeing anything because it can't fit into anything, so they won't remember it.
Yeah.
And do you think, as a species, and this is more looking at us now, but is it ego that scares us from having entities that we're not the top of the food chain, that we're not even the smartest thing on this planet? What do you think it's causing us as like a society to just have a hard time accepting this?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's deeply ingrained biologically and you know, and then we have all these cultural norms, especially in the modern age. We live in the age of materialism where
Right,
God is dead and everything's boring, right? There's no mystery and or magic or nothing to look at, not, but yet we live in a world that is full of mystery. So a lot of people, it's the stigma. You don't want to be the outlier, right?
right,
You don't want to be the zebra without stripes because the lion will get you. And I think that's really a lot of it. And I think in the past, human beings were more in tune and we were more religious and open to all of this. And you could go to church or you could go to your family and be like, hey, I just saw a weird thing happen.
right.
And it was like, okay, well, that's something in our ontology that does occur, back, 300 years ago. But the ontology has been changed by, academia and the education system. So now there's nowhere to report the weird.
Right.
Because nothing is weird, right? The
Not
world's
anymore.
normal anymore. Yeah, now
Not anymore.
nothing is weird.
Man,
Yeah,
yeah, I feel bad. Go ahead.
people are afraid to to tell the truth about what they see now. You know, and that's sad, and that's what we're trying to change. And I think it is changing. People are coming together, feeling safe to talk about this stuff now, and that's good.
And it's more prevalent now that there's people in defense departments that are experiencers from a young age. And I mean like abductees or contactees. And they know this when they hire them, they're fully aware of it. And it's crazy the amount, like there's Sarah Gam that we're talking to, Jim Semivan. They're all lifetime experiencers and they're working for the DOD, like CIA, and there's a part of me that's like, okay, well, are they keeping tabs on people? Are they aware of these people given jobs? Are they sought out? And it raises questions as to whether or not it's just a mutual progression that more and more contactees become, defense department, almost like a seeping, if you will.
Yeah,
But I've noticed that that seems to be more of a trend, and good for them. I think the more whistleblowers we have, you don't necessarily need to be an experiencer from a young age or an abductee, but the fact that you had a solid sighting and that
Yeah.
you haven't deviated from your story. You haven't added to it. You haven't embellished it. It is what it is.
Yeah.
But that in of itself is fascinating because that means that it is what it is. You saw, a giant red square. Like that's amazing. And
Right.
we have so many grifters that, maybe they have a sighting and it becomes famous, and all of a sudden, no, no, I've had another sighting. And then you start seeing papier mache heads poking through the windows, and you're like, why would they travel here from wherever they come from to peekaboo in the window? It makes no sense to me.
Right.
And I think that discredits ufologists or legitimate whistleblowers. And it's almost like it's an intentional thing that they just seem to be in our community, like a disinfo or make you not trust anybody. Oh, well, Jeff, he's bound to turn. They all turn, right? They all chase money, but there is no money in this. If you're
Yeah.
making money, tell me the secret.
Yeah. Right. We all want to know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
This year you're going to Contact in the Desert, which dude, I'm so looking forward to. And I'll get to, hang out with you guys in person, which is always nice. It's so isolating in Canada because nobody really covers this. None of my family, none of my friends care about this subject. They don't even know how good the podcast is doing. And I'm like, okay, it feels alone, but whenever I go down there, it's like everybody's family and friends almost instantly.
Yeah.
A lot of people, we talk throughout the year, but to actually get to hang out, that's something completely different. Um,
Yeah.
Now you're going to Contact. You're also doing a lecture or you're speaking, right?
Yeah.
Do you kind
Yeah.
of know what you're going to be talking about?
Not yet. We're going to have a meeting. There's a lot of things I have to talk about, so we're going to kind of parse it out. And I'm really excited. My good friend Scott Guerin uh, should be there. I'm hoping that all works out. I'm really excited for people to hear him and his story. Scott is he's a legendary Air Force special operator, and he became like famous for surviving a 3,000 foot free fall. Uh,
Wow.
yeah, and he basically somehow survived that fall and then went back on active duty and finished out a 20 plus year career.
Now,
You
was he
know,
flying the plane or did he jump out of the plane?
he was jumping. He had trained a bunch of, I think, they're Navy SEALs that morning to do medical, life-saving medical
Right.
procedures. Break. So he trained them up that morning. Then he took them up and they jumped. And Scott went first, and the guy above him messed up and came right through his parachute and shattered Scott's skull.
Oh,
And yeah, and then he just tumbled, free fell 3,200 feet and hit the ground. And yeah, and basically walked it off.
that's a
After,
man. That's a
yeah,
man right there. Yeah.
but he captured, in my opinion, the absolute clearest footage of a UAP I've ever seen
Oh,
in
really?
Florida, like 2018. And then he's got high quality photos and video of this object. And he did everything right. He took it to the Air Force, he took it to DOD, and they kind of gave him the runaround, and then we're hoping he would never talk about it again. But he's talking about it,
Right.
so he'll be at Contact. I'm hoping uh, people get to hear him and get to meet him. And yeah, I've got a lot to
Bring
talk
the
about.
picture.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. But this is the thing you were talking about the picture and the best quality. And then when we had Arrow,
mhm,
testify and they're showing the most blurry, like, oh, that's it. That's what we get, which we know it's not true because
yeah,
everybody that's been interviewed said we gave them everything and then they just come out, well, we didn't see anything. And it turns out they were infiltrated by the CIA to start off with. You never stood a chance.
yeah,
Do you think we're going to get good footage or good pictures like what your friends took? Like, is that something that we eventually get to Congress and at a hearing?
yeah. I, whether or not the public ever sees it, I know some people in Congress have seen some of the footage.
Okay.
But yeah, we're hoping that eventually they can see what we're really talking about, and then that will light a real fire behind the scenes, you know.
Okay,
But
Jeff.
some of that's already happened. That's why you have so many people in the government now really taking it seriously. They've seen a few videos and pictures in a skiff, and they know we're not alone here.
Yeah, I think at that point. A
Yeah.
question for you, Jeff. For a skiff, so how is it that they're able to see video or, pictures or whatever of crafts, entities? What makes it that skiff can show it, but they can't show it in Congress or they can't reveal it? Like, how does that work? I never understood that.
All a skiff is, it's a room that is packed with electronics in the floor, ceiling, and walls that prevents spying.
Okay.
So you can go into that room, you seal it, and then you could discuss anything. Uh, and also, show videos and things like that. That's all it is. It's a room where you can talk about classified information.
So Congress is allowed to see this stuff. They're just not allowed to talk about it to the public, right?
No, the problem is you have to have a security clearance of the appropriate level
Okay.
and a need to know.
So
And basically, what the intelligence community is telling Congress, you don't have the proper clearance or a need to know. We don't have to tell you what we're doing.
their own boss,
Yeah.
Congress.
Right.
Imagine the balls it takes to do that. Like if I worked for you and you're like, "Hey, Jason, can you clean up?" And I'm like, "No," I'd get fired so fast. Like you're not the boss of me. You pay
Yeah.
me, but I'm not answering to you, right? That's
Yeah. And that is the game they're playing.
yeah.
And Congress can't even figure out who they need to talk to begin the process to get the clearance they need to look at the information. So
That's
they're,
evident in of itself. How is
yeah.
that not evidence that they're trying to keep that? Oh, sorry. Well, if you don't know the name, we can't help you. Right. Wow. Yeah, it's a political game as much as it is an information game. And I think with all the psyops that we've all been through over the last 80 years, we can't make heads or tails of what's true, what's not true.
Right.
And the information that's coming out now, like I said, you got to be careful. If you're at the top, top podcast, top news network, you're the priority number one to fool.
Yeah.
Priority number one to throw it off your game because if we could discredit you, it'll be easy to discredit everybody else and get, the information out there that we want. But I think we're starting to catch on to, it's always lies, deceit, and repeat.
Yeah.
And we're tired of it. But the reason behind this, like you said, if it is for the betterment of humankind and they're masquerading it as no, no, you don't want to know. You don't want to know. It's like, no, I do. Because besides eating me, what is the worst that can happen? I can't wrap my head around that one. Like, oh, you'd be so terrified. What? Lizard people? They eat us? What is it? I want to
Well,
know.
we're living through it already, right?
It's not going to change anything, right?
Yeah.
Still going to be a power. I never understood that. When I was in church, that was one thing that I noticed. Like this was years and years ago, but I was like the worship pastor leader. And, I had a lot of people would scoff if you mention UFOs, even within the church, because they were so, there can't be anything else. It's only what's in the 66 books of the Bible. And I'm like, man, if you think you can peg what God, whatever it is in 66 books in a page in a book, you're a better person than I. I don't think it's that simple. And I think that up to this point, it was a guide for us to understand that compassion and love is the most powerful thing, emotion you can have. And it's been proven that if you get angry, if you're very, it's actually the lowest vibration that you can possibly be is the hateful, spiteful, whereas love is the highest. And I think a lot of our abilities, especially amongst the abductees, we've noticed that they're genuine people. Like, you'll walk in a room and out of 20 people, the one person that's not feeling good. And
Yeah.
you'll
Right.
target that person. You'll try to make sure that they're having a fun time.
Yeah.
And most people aren't like that. And, when you stand in a room of people and you realize we're not all the same level of consciousness, some of us a little bit further ahead than others, but through love, you can bring that up. And I think that's what they're trying to say. Your consciousness is basically all of you at once, not just one person.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's an important part. But what I was getting at before that, church they had a hard time with it, and I've interviewed a couple of investigators really early on in the podcast. They were talking about interviewing people in church that were abductees and experiencers. They couldn't wrap their heads around it, so they always looked at it as it was a demon
Yeah.
possession. And now we're starting to hear like, oh no, we can't release the information because it's all related to demons. What is your thought on that?
Yeah. I mean, we don't know what we're dealing with, right? And you know, there could be I think we're really dealing with a multitude of different things. Like for example, there was an invisible world we were completely unaware of until we developed a microscope, right? And it's like, oh no, like we're surrounded by a like diversity of life. We had no idea, right? And I think that scales all the way up. And I think that we're surrounded by different entities and life forms that we just can't comprehend. We don't have the senses, to detect them. So, I understand, religious people that are like, well, don't tempt, these are forces beyond our control or understanding, so don't, engage with them. But they're engaging with me, whatever they are. I didn't call any kind of demon or anything. It just showed up, you know.
Yeah,
And so that's the thing. I don't know what we're dealing with. When people ask me, well, what did you see? I'm like, I don't know. I saw an orb of light that looked solid. That's what it was. I don't know what it was or where it's from, you know. So I just think people have to use their own discretion. And if you have an encounter, then you've got kind of a baseline. Like, were you terrified or were you in awe, right?
right,
And kind of trust your gut. And that's the other weird thing. People have like my encounter, there was a little bit of fear for a moment, but it was awe and wonder,
right.
you know, excitement. And then other people have terrifying. They can see the same thing as me, but they have a completely different experience, right? So I don't know. The whole was demons leave it alone. I say, we'll prove it.
Yeah, and then I'm still like, I'm not convinced that it is. I mean, it's technology. They wear suits. They got different interactions. A lot of people have positive, some negative. Yes, of course. But I think if we're getting visited by a plethora of different entities, they're not all going to be friendly. Some
Yeah.
of them are in it for themselves. We've had human mutilations, the same if we had animal mutilations. I think the last one that I know of, when I was talking to Chuck Zukowski, he was mentioning was a 16-year-old girl somewhere in Texas was the last victim that they found.
Wow.
And that is something very interesting because I don't think that's related to the Greys. As far as we know by the Greys, they bring you back, they even tuck you back in bed. So I don't think it's them, but we don't necessarily know who else is here. When you're talking about the face peelers in Brazil back in, and they're still talking about it now. In 1977, they were again zapped. Like there's some bad energy out there for sure, and I'm not, uh, you know, dismissing that some of them have really bad intentions or selfish intentions.
Yeah.
But the fact is that we're being able to be visited, that whatever these things are could locate our planet and go, hey, there's people there, let's go see it. That to me excites me.
Yeah.
That it could be like Star Wars. There could be a plethora of, mutual aliens like us that at least have the same concept of morality that we do. But that excites me. I think it gave me an excitement that I had when I was a little kid. And I don't know if it does for you too.
Oh yeah. I mean, if that could be a future that my kids can inherit, if we could finally get to the bottom of this and find out like what reality actually is
Yeah.
like, and then maybe, my kids could be out flying through the stars, right?
It's our future.
Yeah. So
It's where
why
we're
not?
supposed to be. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So
with Steven Spielberg coming out on June 12th, I think it's coming out with the Disclosure Day. And I got mixed feelings about it because, it wasn't what I thought it was going to be about. But again, I haven't seen the film. I don't know anything about it. I would have liked to see more on the aspect of maybe real government secrets as opposed to like a high tech genius that controls everything, aka like, skunk works or whatever. And they didn't do that. And I think that's a disservice to military men and women that have experienced that. But I'm just wondering what your thoughts is. Is this a positive thing? Is it a negative thing?
well, I think it's positive. The movie in general is going to be positive because it's going to be eyes on, right? We had Age of Disclosure, and now we've got Disclosure Day.
Right.
One is a documentary and one is a fiction. And I'm interested to see how the two blend, if
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it looks like he's trying to paint. Uh, I didn't know what to make of the trailer really, but it has the vibe that maybe that there's hybrids and artificial intelligence is playing a role, and it's got a very dark tone.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I'm just waiting.
yeah,
You
me
know,
too. Well, I'm
we're-
excited for it.
yeah, I'm excited about it, but it does have a dark tone.
I was thinking even with the creatures in the movie, like, you see like an elk, whatever, if that was like a false memory.
Yeah.
I've some people say that, oh, there was a gentleman that I spoke to, and when he was a kid, he went to the bathroom at night and he opened up the bathroom door to go back outside. I think I'll remember his name, John Yost. He opened up the bathroom door, and standing right in front of him, the same height as him, is Ultraman, because he was a big Ultraman fan. And he's 7 years old. And then Ultraman grabbed him. He doesn't remember, but under hypnosis, they found I wasn't Ultraman. That was a screen memory. What was standing in front of him was a gray. And then when it grabbed him, he panicked, but he doesn't remember that. And I think maybe a lot more people have had experiences like this that they don't recall. And
Yeah.
Close Encounters of the Third Kind reactivated some of that for some people. I know a lot of people were afraid of it. And I'm almost wondering if this is going to be the big boost for UAP, kind of
Yeah.
like what we need for the topic to go. And if that's the case, what would you like to be addressed the most?
Wow. That's a good question.
Yeah, write that one down. It's a good question.
I don't know, man. What would you like to be addressed the most? What do you
the
think?
the entities,
Yeah.
because as
Yeah.
much as I'm fascinated by their technology, which to me is like magic, I think to anybody's magic, but it's the entities themselves that I'm interested in because it comes from them. All the technology comes from them. But what I found is like with the entities, they seem to come in sets of threes,
Mhm.
always three. And I was like, one is like, repeating of the Trinity, or like there's power in three. Decision making in three is a better decision than two people who could be. I think there's something to that unity, whatever it is. And I'd like that to be mentioned, not just the hybridization program that they were talking about at Congress last session, of course, but the fact that these entities, they're more advanced. Can we talk to them? I want an actual conversation, not just seeing a UFO. I guess that would be mine.
Yeah. 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 Me too, man. Yeah, I'm more interested in the experiencers and the entities than the technology.
Right.
Um, the technology is fascinating too, but I want to know like what are we dealing with and why and how does it affect us and why is there a communication?
Right.
Because
What's
even
the
with my
purpose?
my event, that was communication,
Right.
that we had with this thing, and it blinked at us, and we paid attention, and it kept paying attention, and it came down and said hello. You
It's
know,
almost like it's intentional when you
yeah,
look retroactively back. At the moment, you don't, but you're sitting in Congress and you're testifying in Congress about what you've seen 20 odd what years later. And it's almost like that was the reason why. Like
yeah,
that activated, you were the person that was going to be in Congress to to talk about this. I just noticed my Zoom follows my hand around. Like, no, I'm over here. Uh, yeah, exactly. But everybody's like that too. And when I was talking to George Knapp, he had no intention of being the UFO journalist. Like that was never from the onset ever his plan. He became that.
Yeah,
And a lot of people like yourself become active in this after a sighting, but it's almost like it triggers something inside of you,
yeah,
like a need, like it drives you crazy. You just want to talk about it and tell everybody, look, this shit's
yeah,
real,
yeah.
right? And it's so many people like that. What do you think overall with, you got different compartment, but we haven't heard anything from the Air Force and we haven't heard anything from Space Force,
Yeah. You will not.
which no.
No.
Do you think we're ever going to hear from them?
Only if compelled, and you're not going to get anything valuable from
Yeah,
the
I
Air Force.
doubt. Like Space Force has been around for a while, yet we don't know diddly squat about it. Like, do they have ships? Is it purely satellites? Like, we know they're using these laser beams on Iran or something. I'm like, okay, well, that's interesting because now they're starting to show that they got weapons in space. And I'm
Yeah.
wondering, are all the weapons just pointed at us or are they pointed out?
Yeah, right. We have some pointing out,
Yeah,
shooting
two or
ourselves.
three. Yeah, two or three. The rest of the hundreds are all pointing at us.
Yeah,
As we're
that's
so
crazy when you think about it like that. The planet's there, and we all have our guns pointing at ourselves.
It's like Russian roulette. We all have guns pointed at our heads, going, "You pull the trigger, I pull the trigger." It's so dumb. We're
Yeah,
such a dumb species.
we are.
Collectively, individually, we could be smart.
Yeah.
And that's, like I said, people like you that are coming forward, the whistleblowers, coming forward, and they are aplenty. Again, I don't expect the Air Force or Space Force to have whistleblowers. So far, we have not had that. NASA, let's not count NASA in at all.
No,
I don't think they're playing ball with us.
no,
Uh,
they are not acting in good faith at all.
no, and there's no way they don't know.
Yeah.
If
They,
anybody would know, it would be NASA from early on.
yeah.
That part doesn't make any
We're,
sense to
we're
me.
pretty sure that the triangle that Dylan Borland saw came out of that NASA hangar. We're pretty sure.
Even I found out there's this Lockheed Martin just 3 hours from here. I just found in Canada. I didn't
Wow.
know they operated in Canada, but where they operate, they see weird lights in the skies all the time, and I bet you it has something to do with them. And I'm like, yeah, that's it. Move everything over to Canada. We got plenty of space. You won't see
Yeah,
anything,
right.
right? And it's coming out too now with the mutuality, or I'd say since 1947, the states and Canada have been like this. But anything that happens on the Canadian side is the same as the Varginha case. It gets given to the U.S.
Yeah,
They're in charge of everything.
yeah.
Allegedly, in the 70s, there was a creature found in Manitoba, and it got shipped to the States before the Defense Department of Canada was even aware of it. That was Paul Hillier.
Yeah.
And it just goes to show you that even other countries don't have control over this information. And it just sucks as we know there's clear evidence. People in the States are aware of this, though they will never hear from it. And that part's sad. If you're a whistleblower and you want to come forward, what are the best, according to your experience? What is the best way to go about it?
Right now, man, you have to be very cautious. Um, because you look at what happened with Dylan Borland. Okay, so Dylan went to Congress. Congress sent him to Arrow. He provided all the information to Arrow. Arrow classified his testimony top secret and said, if you open your mouth about this, you're going to jail. Then he went to the inspector general for, the intelligence community, and it got worse. So, you know, uh, I think very soon there will be a place to go. I'm involved in a project that we're trying to put together an organization so that whistleblowers can protect and help whistleblowers. We're tired of being promised,
Yeah.
resources and protection and legal services. None of that has come through. So we've got a plan. Hopefully that plan will be enacted very soon, in weeks or maybe a month, and it'll be public. So I'll tell any whistleblowers out there at the moment to just stand by. And then and if you do have information, you have to really think about what your intention is for bringing it out,
Right.
because it will impact your life, and it could be in a very adverse way. And it could impact your family relationships, your friend circles, and everything. So I know a lot of times I've had people that weren't whistleblowers per se, but they were very credible,
Right.
ex-military people, and I have cautioned them. It's their decision, but it's like you've got a pretty wild story, and if you go public, it's gonna be rough, right?
Right.
So people have to think about, do you have support? Do you have people that, have your back if you come out? And
That's crazy that
yeah,
that's even a thing.
yeah, just for speaking your truth, right? You have to
Yeah.
really think
You
about.
witness or experience something and you're told, we'll wreck your life if you talk. There's nothing else like it. Like I can't think of anything besides maybe like, some corrupted people, but I can't think of anything like it to ask your servicemen and women to do a task. And when they're surprised with something, you go, shut up.
Yep.
Right. And I just, like I said, I don't trust it. That missing, was it a major or general that's missing
Oh
right
yeah,
now?
the general, the three-star, yeah.
Dude, that is messed up. Him and another woman that helped work on some sort of project together within 3 weeks apart, they
Yeah,
both go missing.
right.
And, right after you get like, oh, we're going to disclose all the UFOs. Everybody's going to get UFOs. They love me. They say, Donald, you're great. But that's
That's
not,
and you try.
I've been working on it. Uh, but yeah, he promised that. And then all of a sudden people start going missing. And I'm thinking, okay, if I'm the men in black, my tactics have to change. I can't, just knock on your door and scare you anymore. Everybody's got doorbell cameras, right?
Yeah,
But they're going to change their tactics. And I think, well, why not go after everybody that knows something? And even if they're at the top, like, I don't think there's an end game for those people. I don't think there's a way out of a natural death with
yeah,
those people. And I'm not going to, ask you to speculate on that. But I think there's a lot of people in a position of being in the military that have just disappeared.
yeah.
And I just don't see a way out of that. If it's that secret, they'll never let you off. You know
No,
what I mean?
yeah. And the danger of being a whistleblower, whether it's UFOs or whatever, is very real, right? Very real. You know, there have been lots of people testifying in court that died while testifying, right? That happened a few years ago with the Boeing contractors, and the two primary witnesses just happened to both die. Now,
I
could just be a coincidence,
mean, the
right?
night before the trial in their hotel room, but who's saying? Who's saying?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, people need to understand, because for a lot of people, this is entertainment,
Yeah.
right? And it is for me too. Like I'm entertained by it, and I'm glad that it can be fun and we can speculate and people could put wacky things. And we need that. It can't be too serious. But yeah, if you're somebody with real information that might be classified or very sensitive, you have to really be careful what you're dealing with. You really
It's
do.
like the damage or the threat is not from the entities or the sighting, comes from our own people.
Yeah.
Isn't that messed up? Like our own government, our own people, of this species. And that's,
Yeah.
again, it's a topic for another day. I just don't understand. Can't wrap my head around that. Um, Jeff Nuccetelli podcast. Now, this is out. This is your YouTube channel. Are you available like on Spotify, Apple? Where can people find you?
Right now, just YouTube. We're
Just
just on.
YouTube. You got to get on Spotify, my man.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
know.
that people will definitely. I mean, everybody's on Spotify these days. Yeah, so visit Jeff Nuccetelli, guys, podcast. Give him some love, like, subscribe, and follow his channel. He does have a lot of people that have come on, and going to be coming on later on that are well worth listening to and listening to these interviews. And this is what we need. We need people, more people like you, Jeff, with a pair of balls that are willing to stand up and say something, do something, not just, like we were saying, toilet
Right.
experts. That's not your position. You don't have that luxury,
Yeah.
right? Like you're living it and you've proven it. You went to Congress, you did your thing, and you're still doing your thing. And like I said, I could only commend you on that, my man, because I could only imagine how hard it is. But you're doing it, and we do appreciate you.
Yeah, and I appreciate it, man, so much. And I've been telling everyone, podcasters are the frontline troops in this fight. You guys are the ones doing the research, having the conversation, asking the questions. So I really appreciate it. And all your viewers, thank you for giving us a voice, man. I really appreciate it. And good things are coming.
Amen. Let's just
Coming.
hang in there. Just hang on, guys. We'll be back, guys, with another podcast very soon. And again, if you are somebody out there who's been in the military service, even if you're a police officer, firefighter, anybody in service, if you've experienced something, there are groups out there. There are some people that can help out, and people that have experience like Jeff. You could always try to connect with them and even get advice just on whether to stand up or stand down. He's walked the walk and talked the talk, so he'd be the perfect guy for that. And yeah, that's it for us right now. We'll be back with another episode. I believe James Fox is our following episode, and
Right.
they'll be good because they'll go coincide with your story of the Varginha case there, Jeff.
Yeah.
Be able to
Great.
ask him, what was Jeff like when you were vacationing? Was he snoring?
He's got
Awesome.
stories.
Exactly. All right, guys. See you soon.